ABCC Live webinar. I'm really, really looking forward to this webinar today. We have AppEnsure on the line with us. And, you know, I always say my favorite part of any webinar or podcast that I do is I get to learn right along with everybody else. And in this one for sure, it's just a super, super neat technology. So we, as always, are going to let people sort of log in. I see people logging in and they're on, but they're not dialed in yet. So we'll just give you, maybe 1 or 2 minutes to settle in, and then we'll get started. Also, of course, as always with any webinar I do, I like to make these things interactive. So please use the questions piece of GoToWebinar. We can actually test that, your ability to ask questions right now and my ability to answer them. By just using the question piece. If you can hear me, okay. If you can hear me, then tell me you can't hear me. Then I'll sort of scramble and not really do anything for pretend I am, because I don't know what to do if you can't hear me. So, but hopefully you can. And what we'll do is we'll get to those questions within the context. So as Sri here today is going through this demo and really walking you through it, I want you to ask questions. Say, oh, can you do this? Or, oh, can you do that? Or how does this work? And we have the right guy, the right guy today to really answer pretty much anything you can come up with. So, and if dump them, then someone will buy you a hamburger. So I don't know about that, but is that a deal? Can we play Stump Sri for a hamburger?
Yeah, sure. I'll fly there wherever they are and buy them a hamburger if they can stop me. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So we're 2 after, so I rambled for long enough. Let's go ahead and get started. So we'll do official start, and then when we do the cut for the recorded version, as always, these are recorded. So if you enjoy it, we'll get you the recorded version in a couple days and post it to the site, and then you can show that to your boss or your friends or what have you. If you also like it, tweet about it. Say, hey, we're listening to a great webinar on join with the ABCC and the guys at AppEnsure. So let's get going. So thanks everyone for attending this episode of the ABCC Live. I'm really excited today. We have AppEnsure with us. These guys are an amazing company, and as you see on the screen, they're also a Citrix startup accelerator company, which Sri will talk about. So with no further ado, I want to introduce my guest for today, the presenter of the webinar today, a gentleman named Sri, and he is the founder of AppEnsure and really the brains behind this project. So Sri, thank you so much for coming on and demoing and showing us a product today. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Greetings, everyone.
So,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna. Well, I was gonna ask you. Can you tell us real quick, who you are and maybe a little bit about why you founded AppEnsure, and then just, I'll shut up and let you get to it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Sri Chaganty. I'm the CTO and founder of AppEnsure. AppEnsure was founded actually out of the experience consulting for 15 years with helping people perfecting their application performance, because I happen to have provided the networking software to them, and network was blamed all the time, and so we went in there and basically did a lot of consulting work to figure out what was happening, especially when the application loads were virtualized. And out of that experience, having done it 2 times, we said, hey, there is a hole here, there is a lack of visibility, and market needs a solution like that, and took a unique approach in building AppEnsure and founding AppEnsure. So with that little introduction about AppEnsure, I want to kind of give you a roadmap of what we're going to be covering today. I'll start off with a little introduction on where AppEnsure's technology is focused, and kind of go into a little bit of the perspective with which I started AppEnsure and how we built the solution. And then I'll go into the demo, and we'll have Q&A. And of course, as Doug said, contextually, if you have any questions, please do interrupt me, and I'll be able to address them as we're going along. So to begin, to set the focus right, AppEnsure is focused in IT operations. So there are a lot of APM vocabulary goes around, and everybody is put into the same category. However, I would like to point out that according to Gartner, AppEnsure belongs to AA-IPM, Application Aware Infrastructure Performance Management, which basically means that application performance management that can be measured without having to touch the code, instrument the code. So we are operations focused, we are real-time data, not synthetic transactions, and the application operational intelligence that we gather basically helps you not only address the problems that you face day to day, but actually have a long-term view of how the application is performing and how you can better tune it for scalability and availability. So with that introduction, let me go in and start talking about the perspectives I had, which first thing I want to mention, unlike other webinars you might have attended, this webinar is going to be different in style and content. I'm not here to teach or preach what you already know. This webinar will not be about slideware. It will be about showing you our product and initiate you into thinking about perfecting the performance of your Citrix environment in a totally new approach. If you're attending this webinar, then you've already decided that you want to perfect your Citrix delivery process. It could be because you're not getting what you're expecting out of the solutions or tools you have already implemented. Or it could be because you have decided that you can improve upon what you're experiencing today. In either case, your attendance is much appreciated, and let us focus on perfecting the performance of your Citrix environments. Perfecting performance is not just about finding problem issues and solving them. That is what you're being forced to do today daily. Of course, AppEnsure will empower you to do that in a more effective way. However, perfecting performance should free you from the vicious cycle of firefighting on a daily basis. That freedom from war room meetings and brainstorm sessions will happen when you use the operational intelligence you gain monitoring your application behaviors over a period of time so that you can define and develop good behavior patterns for your applications. Many solutions and vendors out there emphasize more on what went wrong and how to fix it, or the emphasis is always on how to find the bug. But in the process, equal emphasis should be paid on why, so that we can avoid such issues in future. That can happen only when you develop contextual intelligence of events, which are driven by demand and load. AppEnsure provides you with that correlated intelligence to face your daily challenges as well as your scalability demands. Finally, how to perfect performance is important, and how you can do it when you have the capability to harvest the data from your Citrix environments, behavior patterns, and when you can gain a deep understanding of who uses what application, when and how, as well as how does the application perform under various contexts. Before I start demonstrating our solution, I want to invite you to step out of your usual perceptions of performance management and start looking at it from a different angle, just like what we did when we conceptualized and developed the solution in light of the shortfalls of the current solutions. I want to share with you the vision and perspective that drove us all to ensure in developing the product. To begin, I humbly request you, just like we did, to think about being application-centric rather than server-centric. Think about user behavior in the context of user experience. Think about not only resolving your immediate problems, but about operational intelligence of your application. Think about intelligent data set, not just rich data set. Think about strategic improvements to your business critical applications, not just about day-to-day files you need to put out. So far, you're exposed to solutions that gather commodity data, be it Citrix provided, Microsoft WMI, SNMP, NetFlow, whatever commodity data sources that are present. Interpreting that commodity data provides commodity results. And many of the sources of such commodity data, like WMI, are very resource intensive. They're highly taxing on your servers. AppEnsure solution is not solely dependent on this set of commodity data. AppEnsure independently collects unique data that provides intelligence that is otherwise missing today. Based on the experience of having been consulting with many clients to improve their application performance for 15 years before starting AppEnsure, one fundamental perspective and differentiator we built into our solution is how we look at the performance of an application. Application is never reflected in the metrics you collect that show how resources are being utilized. Your CPU utilizations, memory utilizations are meaningless for application performance as they're correlated intelligently with other metrics. Without that correlation, the resource utilization metrics are not going to help you in perfecting your application performance loads. Perfecting your application performance is not just about fixing problems or predicting about problems alone. You can use many APM tools to code instrument to perfect the code. That is, if you have access to the source code, which is of course not possible for vendor applications like SAP or Microsoft Exchange. Or code instrumentation will not help you in understanding the interactions that the application has with the infrastructure and the contextual variations in the infrastructure that will affect your application performance. Perfecting your application workloads requires a thorough understanding of everything that the application is dependent upon. Its interactions on the services it is dependent upon at the atomic level of each component of the application, be it in the presentation tier, application tier, or database tier, irrespective of those services being internal to the server and the kernel or external to the server where the component is run. Many solutions today misrepresent visibility. Visibility is not throwing a lot of data at you. Visibility is not making you interpret mountains of data manually. Visibility is about making your life easy by allowing you to drill down to the details in a meaningful way. The most meaningful metric for any application is the response time that end user is experiencing when using the application. So before I jump into the demo, I want to go into telling you a short story that reflects my perspective in AppEnsure. After the first supersonic Concorde flight finished its maiden flight across Pacific, the captain was standing at the gate and was greeting the passengers that were getting off the plane. An elderly woman who spent a lot of money on getting onto this first flight said to him, it was just like any other normal plane ride. To which he responded, that was the most difficult part of all, ma'am. Simplicity is tough. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Before we go to the product demonstration, I just want to rate what we promised and that we will demonstrate today. In the emails that were sent out, we emphasized that we will cover these topics related to Citrix environments. My objective in demoing our product is to show you some key features of the product so that you can decide for yourself if our solution meets some of the objectives that you have in your mind while attending this webinar. AppEnsure is very rich in its set of features. Besides Citrix delivered applications or images, we support all applications, cloud, off the shelf, all delivery mechanisms, thick client, thin client, web-based, Citrix delivered and VDI, all kinds of architecture, 3-tier, multi-tier, composition of custom or off-the-shelf applications, irrespective of where those applications are being hosted, be it in your data centers, in the cloud, or in a hybrid environment. It is impossible to show off all the features of AppEnsure's product in one single webinar. Therefore, I will focus on 3 use cases and demonstrate the product in light of those use cases. I'll focus on perfecting performance through application operational intelligence, true visibility of the application performance, and root cause diagnostic capability of the product. With that, I'll jump product. And Doug, if you have any questions before I start off the demo. guess not.
Please, nope. No. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I had myself on mute. I don't, but guys out there listening, definitely, now we're going to get into the demo, so don't forget, this is your chance to ask questions. So please use that question piece to go to webinar, and I can't wait to see it. So please have at it.
Great. What you're looking at is the web console, master controller, where all the information gathered from your application environment is presented, interpreted, correlated, and presented. As I mentioned earlier on, we support all kinds of applications. Any application that is not being published or any VDI that is not being streamed, we call them as standard applications. And since our focus today is going to be remote applications delivered through either Citrix, XenApp, or XenDesktop, or remote desktop, again delivered through either XenApp or XenDesktop, I'll focus on those. In our lab environment, we have about 36 servers that were instrumented with AppEnsure agents that are reporting to this master appliance. And we have 11 remote applications that we are publishing, and we have 5 desktops VDI'd from. So, clicking on the remote applications, here is the first point I would like to make. While talking earlier on, I wanted you to think about application-centric. When you go into the applications that are being published by Citrix, what you're seeing on your left-hand side tree structure are all the applications that are being published by about 3 XenApp servers that we have in our labs. And the list of the applications, and if you happen to be having multiple instances of the applications that are being published, we identify and discover the application, multiple instances, and the host that they're being displayed from. One of the points I want to make here is everything that you're seeing here today in this demo is all auto-discovered. When you actually put our agent into your servers, there is no agent restart required. The applications are auto-discovered, application topology is auto-discovered, and the users of the application and how the application is behaving end-to-end, hop-by-hop response time of every application, irrespective of how it is published, is auto-discovered and auto-mapped. So in this summary screen, the highest user latency is the top 5 highest CPU loads and memory utilization are presented. I can go into a particular application. So for example, I take Outlook. Outlook is being published, and I can start looking at the Outlook's behavior in anywhere from last 5 minutes to last 24 hours. As you can see, my Outlook application was down for a few hours in the last 24 hours. When I start looking at how the application is behaving and the data that we're collecting, this is the actual response time, irrespective of what your Citrix metrics will tell as to what the end user is experiencing when accessing the application. The server performance index is basically how the server that is publishing this particular application, which probably might also be publishing other applications from the same XenApp server, is performing. It should be, of course, always in the green zone. Service level indicates how many calls were made to this particular application from the users, and how many of those calls were responded back in that time frame with no errors and within 100 tolerated deviation from the baseline of this 5 seconds. So what is tolerated? The tool comes with a inbuilt self-learning baselining. So it will start measuring the response times of the application and will start collecting that intelligence and will start profiling that baseline based on the time of the day, day of the week, week of the month, month of the year. And in about 3 days, it will start learning and having a pattern, and so it doesn't get excited at 8 o'clock when 1,000 people get onto Outlook and the response time deviates from 5 to 10 seconds. That is the new baseline that it calculates. However, all these self-learning and baselines are user configurable, and you can put your own SLAs to see what kind of responses you're getting throughout the day. If the application is being accessed from multiple locations, the IP addresses are reflected here, especially in environments where Citrix is deployed, like healthcare, where hospitals and doctors are roaming around and they access the same application from multiple IP addresses, and you have a better experience when access to one IP address than the other, because the wireless gateway or wireless router in one floor is better than the other. Then you can see the variation of that and the number of IPs that they're accessed. Here, what is this graph here basically gives you the operational intelligence in terms of what is the CPU utilization on this particular XenApp server for all the applications that are being published, and how time is Outlook waiting to get attention. As you can see here, Outlook is not waiting for any time on this particular. No processes are waiting for CPU's attention. Whereas I'll take an example of another application I know in our environment kind of takes up that. Look at here. Basically, autonomy is another packaged application that most of the legal firms use. When you look at this application here, the CPU utilization is high, but most of the time, autonomy application is waiting. Many processes are waiting. The action is waiting for getting CPU utilization, even though there isn't much of CPU utilization happening in this. This is this operational intelligence I was talking about, where you can actually focus on this and say, here is an area where we can improve. Maybe this is happening because there are too many users. Let's go see how many users are there for this application. There are just 3 users. With just 3 users, just with one user going in and using about 24% of that CPU load, that particular autonomy application is waiting much longer to get a CPU attention. So if I were to scale it up, if I had 100 users that were coming into this using this application, then definitely this application is not ready to scale up. So you don't have to just react to somebody calling and yelling at you that autonomy is not working. By harvesting this data, you basically can see where you can perfect it, or what might be going wrong with that application, or what kind of capacity should be allocated to this particular application. So when going back to Outlook application, the auto topology mapping that I was talking about earlier on looks like this. Again, here, everything is auto-mapped in a server-centric view of the application topology, where all the hops that are involved in this Outlook that go beyond the Citrix silo, because Outlook is not being hosted on the XenApp server. It is going to be hosted in the infrastructure that is behind that Citrix silo. So end to end, from every user who is using this application, you'll be able to see where the calls are coming, what is the response time for every hop, and what is end-to-end response time. You can click on any of these here with a green circle around it is a server that we've agented, and some of the servers don't need to, like we auto-discover them. We don't need to put an agent there. And when you put an agent, the agent basically discovers its neighbors. So when you start with the presentation tier, it discovers the users and the applications the users are accessing, and then discovers the neighbors. When you don't have an agent there, basically gives you an IP address. And many of our customers, the agents into their application topology as they're discovering the real topology of their application, which 99.9% of the time is totally different from what has been recorded in their CMDB systems. You can look at this topology, both grouped in logical server way or by physical server way. Okay. You can also look at this topology, whether it is active or what legs are active and what legs of this topology were inactive in this time frame. Now, if you take this and you actually are looking at 365 days. You basically can see the variation or variations in topology of what portions were active, what portions were inactive, and how many calls were actually fielded by that particular application over a long period of time. I can click on any of these links here, and it'll tell me this is the two ends of this hop, and here is the IP address, the host name, and the logical server that is running in there, and who is it talking to, what process, how many calls did it make, and what kind of response time it got on. Click on any of these nodes here to see what is that host, what are the ports that are open, what are the processes that are talking. And of course, you can tag them and give your own user-friendly names if you don't want to see the IP addresses. So this topology is auto-mapped, as I mentioned earlier on, and this topology basically how an application tentacles are extending into your infrastructure. Now let's look at how we could help you with diagnostics in order to make sure that we have some alert. I selected a little while earlier time and took 24 hours and basically said, let me see if I have any alarms for this application, and I found few. So response time is the most important measurement for any application to measure how it is performing. The response time deviations could happen because of many of the dependencies, as I explained earlier on. So what AppEnsure does is, besides measuring the response time and constantly keeping an eye if the baselines are changing, it also discovers when it sees a transacting application, all the dependencies that the application has within that server, kernel related, and also external services. And these dependencies are constantly being monitored. And irrespective of whether it finds a response time deviation or not, if there are some service failures or whatever, then the auto discovery kicks in and basically sends the alarm. So alarm, again, I want to underline. When the response time deviates, we just don't alert saying that, hey, your response time has deviated. What AppEnsure does, the master does, is when a response time deviation happens, it basically instructs agents in different tiers to do diagnostics, collects all of that information, correlates that information, and basically tries to find the root cause to say, here is why a response time is deviating. So when we generate alarms, there is a lot of diagnostics that has happened behind, and basically that is what is, and the root cause of what might be the consequence of what we've discovered will be given as an alarm summary, and you basically can click on it and you'll see that why that no new connections are going to be established because we discovered that XenApp server is not going to allow, because we've seen an IMA service going down, and because of that service going down, new connections will not come. You better fix it, or else you're going to be getting telephone calls pretty soon from people who are trying to access this application. So that is the feature in terms of the root cause that we present. The idea behind that is, how can we reduce the mean time it takes for you to normally resolve an incident? Unless somebody calls, you probably might not have discovered that the IMA service was down. Unless somebody tells that they're not able to access an application, or they're not able to get, or they have a frozen Citrix logo on their screen, you will not be going out and checking out what is happening with the services that the applications are dependent upon. Here, proactively, predictively, you can see as the critical alarms come up saying that, okay, I have to go in and fix that before anybody can experience a bad experience. This is a summary of how published applications in the Citrix environment, you can actually gather the data, go into the details, and be able to resolve the issues that you see face to face. Let's spend a couple of minutes on remote desktop, the images that are being streamed to the end users. Again, again, I go back to my earlier statement. Rather than server-centric, the focus here is image-centric, VDI-centric. How many VDIs am I, and where are they coming from? What is the highest users that an image has, the top 5? What is the highest user launch time? And what are the highest user latencies? And I can basically take any of these images and I can basically look at what is happening with that particular image and how is that image performing in the last 1 hour. When you deliver a VDI, AppEnsure allows you to bake in the agent inside that image as well, so that you actually can see what is happening with the image that's being delivered. So here, this is the response time from where the image is being delivered, DDC, and what is the processor time and the image memory utilization from that particular desktop, from that particular virtual machine where this VDI is being streamed. I can also go into the details of this because here we pick a remote desktop. In other words, I put an agent inside the image that I am actually streaming. Here, this is the actual response time of the image that the end user is experiencing. And there are the ICHDX processor times and other system processes that were spun off, the percentage that they're exercising, the I/O, and the memory utilizations. Now I can dig deeper into the session details. Supposing, say, this AppEnsure W8, a person has actually called in saying that I'm having issues with my image, I see something wrong with the VDI, then you can actually start going down into the details of that session. Or even if there is an alarm that has been generated where you basically can figure out as to what's happening, you can start digging down into the details of that particular user to see what is happening with the who the username is, published, desktop, logon server, client, receiver, and the particulars. Looks like my internet is having a little bit problem. Yeah. And well, let me see if I can load it up from here. And let me see, RVA. And I can go into the session details.
Well, while you're working on that, just real quick, guys, if you have any questions, please use the questions piece to go to webinar. And we already have a few, but we'll, Siri's just running along, so we'll wait and I'll interrupt him in a little bit. But please use the questions piece to answer them, ask them, and I'll get them answered here shortly.
Sure. And if you look at it, the user published name, the processor time in that particular image. Now we are in an image. What is the memory usage of that image? What is the ICA and HDX latencies? What are the session IO writes, session IO reads? How much of bandwidth ICHDX is consuming? I can even further go down into the process details. Now we are talking about the image and what is, and being able to see what are the applications that the user is using inside that image that is being streamed, and how much of what is that they're exercising, and how much of the applications, processor time, memory usage, I/O of that applications, and the supporting processes that are being launched because of the applications that are being exercised within that image. What are the page faults for that, and what is the thread count for each of the applications and the supporting processes that are being activated within that image. So this basically is the depth into the processes of the applications, and if a particular application is what you want to drill down to see what is happening with that particular application, then you actually can see. Wow, what's happening here? I have a network problem. Can you hear me, Doug? I got a message here saying that you have some audio conference.
Need to take myself out of mute first. Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, I just got a message of you. I think I have a, probably it is my internet here. Just give me a second.
You know, I think the internet's having troubles. I've had troubles all day long with the internet. So, and I have a message from someone else saying he can hear you fine. So maybe it's, maybe the poor soul that's having troubles is located near me.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to restore my internet connection here. I think I have probably might have lost it, and that's the reason why I'm not able to log into. I mean, momentarily it should be okay. So let us try that. And then yes, I got restored. That was my internet that I had a problem with. Okay, so activity breakdown. Let me go in, and this is what I was earlier describing. I can actually go in, look at every application that the user is using within that image, and then actually find out how much time that particular application is actually spending in a kernel mode or a user mode. So the importance of this, or the significance of this, when you have a user complaining that my application is not responding, and you actually find out that the application is waiting for user input, and the user is not inputting but basically assuming that the application is not working, you can help the user resolve it, saying that probably something behind the screens of multiple screens they might have opened is stopping them from entering whatever is needed to be entered into that particular form within that application. And this is where, without having to drilling down and into the issues, if you actually see some irregular activity, will give you that depth of visibility that today is not available unless you have 10 different kinds of monitoring tools, and then even then with tons of data that you have to manually be able to see that, manually able to interpret it and come to conclusions as what's happening with those applications or PDIs that you're delivering. So that's a quick tour of our Citrix, how AppEnsure can help you with your perfecting your Citrix environments. As I mentioned earlier on, it is going to be hard for me to go into all kinds of features and all kinds of uses in a limited demo setup. The purpose of this is to actually demonstrate the product in action. And I am now open for any questions and anything else that you would like me to emphasize and show you.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Perfect. I'm off of mute. So, okay, can you talk a bit, here, let me make sure I have, okay. Can you talk more about the installation and at the same time, maybe any impact on agents? Okay.
One of the things that as I told you, I was consulting right before, and one of the things that we found with many tools as to learning curve that it took for us to know and understand how to install the product. So we actually built this with a very simple installation. You install agents on the servers, and you install them with your privileges, and basically there is nothing that is needed to be configured. Okay, the agents are universal agents. They automatically discover the mode that they have to operate in, either in a server mode or in a remote desktop mode that is within the image, or in a desktop mode if you were to install them on the desktops. And the agents are also self-policing agents. They're constantly monitoring what is that they're using, the server resources that they're using, and will never cross the 5% under normal conditions. And if they do, if there is something happening with the server, and do no harm is the principle on which we built this, if they see that something is happening and they are going to be contributing by adding more than 5% of resources, then the agent dramatically throttle back and reduce the frequency at which they are collecting metrics, but they will not be the reason for the servers or adding fire to the servers already degrading performance. And finally, security. From a security perspective, the agents never communicate to the master. That is, the master never communicates to the agents. In other words, there is never downstream communication, so that there is no way that through this master appliance that you could drill a security hole into your server forms. The agents communicate only upward bound to the master, and they poll and they get questions from the master every time they poll and send the information to the master. So typically, to complete addressing that question, Doug, typically a agent installation on a server, if everything is appropriately configured in terms of the ports to be open and everything, should not take more than 5 minutes. And I've been in instances where we installed 50 to 60 agents and the master, the entire environment, within less than 45 minutes.
Perfect, perfect. Can you explain the architecture?
Okay, the architecture, the solution consists of 2 components. One is a master controller, that's what I've been showing now, and the other are the agents. Agents are going to be installed on the servers, that is mandatory. You can bake them into a VDI, that's optional. You can put them on desktops, that's optional too. The agents basically have 3 sensors built into them. One sensor is basically looking at every flow that's coming into that server, and it is basically identifying each flow from each user. So we are identifying the request coming from every user of every application. So, and those flows are uniquely identified every time an application is requested of a service by the user. And the second sensor basically looks at, once a transacting application is discovered on the server, all the dependencies that that component has on the server. What am I using? What's my processes that I'm spawning, threads that I'm spawning, what is there any shared memory, all the services, kernel services, and there is a constant watch on those services. And the third sensor is, am I dependent upon any external services? Am I dependent upon DNS? Am I dependent upon provisioning or licensing servers? All these things that the application delivery mechanism or the application itself are dependent upon are also auto-discovered and are constantly monitored. And these 3 sensors basically collect the data and send the information back to the master. Master is where the intelligence is in terms of correlating the information that it gets from all the agents and discovering the applications automatically and discovering the topology automatically.
Perfect, perfect. Yep. Are you integrated with LDAP?
Yes. The tool comes, you basically can have your LDAP policies applied to how you would provide access to master appliance and the information that it contains.
Perfect. What database is used?
We use a NoSQL Mongo database in the MongoDB behind it. All the scalability, horizontal and vertical sharding capabilities of MongoDB, vertical and horizontal for the enterprise level implementation are supported, and which also brings me to the point of scalability of the solution. We support master of master and collector architecture and can handle hundreds and thousands of agents deployed through this highly available, scalable architecture.
Perfect. Do you support stateless VDI in Xen Server 7.6 release?
Of course, that's one of the unique feature of 7.6 that marketplace is all getting excited about. Yes, we do support. Hitherto, before 7.6, of course, every time you had to publish a VDI, you were locking up a virtual machine dedicated to a user, and with the statelessness, basically one-to-many publishing of the VDIs could be done, and we support it, and in the process of supporting it, we also support the ability to see who are all the people that are getting this particular VDI session. And if you, on top of it, are using technologies like AppEnsure to control the applications that they have access to, you can also monitor those applications, also see the compliance of whether the rules are being met for all users that the VDI sessions are being streamed to.
Perfect, perfect. Will the management appliance only run on VMware? Do you guys support any other hypervisors?
We actually have no dependency on the hypervisor layer. Because the agents are inside the kernel, and whatever might be the underlying hypervisor, we don't really care. The master appliance we provide when you download the OVA file, so you could use vCenter to install the appliance. But we also support standalone. So if you have a virtual machine that runs Ubuntu 10.4, then we can provide the executable that you can install and have a standalone master appliance.
Perfect, perfect. And guys, if you have any more questions, I have a couple more here. But if you have any more questions, please use the questions piece of GoToWebinar and ask away. So can you talk a bit about topology? Is it all auto-discovered?
Yes, topology is all auto-discovered. I'm trying to get to that. And the most, I probably might not have covered that. In this particular application, Outlook, when I actually go and look at the, logically grouping it, the application is Outlook, and I know that I have Citrix silo, and I have the components of the Microsoft Exchange server to which there are communications happening. Then, why is that I see other servers out there that are also part of the topology? Because not only is your application dependent upon its own topology, but it is also, its performance is also going to be affected what other servers that the components of your applications are communicating with and what might happen to it. So not only are we displaying the application specific topology, but if in our case, in our test labs, just because it is our test labs, we basically have very crazy things. There are a lot of other interactions that these servers that are delivering the applications are having with other components in the infrastructure, and any of them might have an adverse effect on how this application is to provide the SLAs that the user is expecting. So that is the reason why when I said the mean time to identifying the problem might not be anything to do with the Outlook, but something else outside that might be influencing how the Outlook is being delivered to your end user, and being able to identify it and drill it down in one place is that unique capability that we have in our server, in our topology mapping. So if you were using a core instrumentation, you only can see what happens within the application transaction stacks, and action with the infrastructure is never revealed. And it takes another set of experts to come in to say where might be the problem. And that is the weakness in this particular topology that is auto-discovered and mapped, is the ability to see what are all the things that could affect your application's performance.
Perfect. I believe this is my last question. So if there's, well, I have one more after this. But if there's, how does it priced?
It's a subscription model. It is, the pricing is per agent basis, and there is no pricing, there is no cost for master appliance. So depending upon the number of agents, that are differently priced for the desktop agents and server agents. And being a very transparent company, the pricing, actual pricing numbers are actually on our website.
Perfect, perfect. And then if anybody has any more questions, please ask questions. We call this a webinar or wait for anyone else. But and that is if somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do? And then you also have a free version, I believe. So can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. We have a free full evaluation program where we encourage people to actually deploy a complete version of the product and deploy as many agents as you can and collect the data for longer period of times. The full free evaluation lasts for 14 days, and that basically allows you to see the product in operation in your environment rather than in my demo labs. There is also a free tool, a free version of it, that allows you to install up to 5 agents, only 5 agents, and comes with a little twist of the ability to retain the data is going to be limited to 24 hours. So you will see product in action, but if you really want to look into this operational behavioral patterns of your application and gather that operational intelligence, a full free evaluation would be a better way to go.
Perfect. And also, if somebody wants to get like the install guides, that's actually on the site, right? That's what I saw recently on the main first page. Is that right?
Oops. Your audio was totally garbled up for some reason.
Oh, let me say that again then. Somebody asked, are there links for the install guides?
Well, when people register for full evaluation or free full evaluation of the product, they get not only the install guide, but also credentials to access the support portal. There is a support portal that has all the guides as well as frequently asked questions and everything, and those credentials will allow them to get into that portal and get the documents.
Perfect, perfect. Do we have any other questions? I believe, well, yeah, I believe that's it. So thank you so much for taking the time to show us this. I'm quite impressed, and I think everyone out there is. We didn't lose anybody. I think one person dropped, and that was somebody who was supposed to drop. So this is great webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us, and thank you for everyone there for attending this webinar. We'll get this and posted here in a matter of days or a day, and share that with you via email too. And Siri, I'll go ahead and give you the last word.
Yeah, well, thanks, Doug. It's really a great pleasure, doing these webinars with you as always. And just wanted to wrap up saying that there is a free trial. Please go to www.appensure.com and sign up and see if our solution meets some of the objectives we have.
Perfect. On that note, we'll go ahead and conclude this thing. So if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to contact me or contact AppEnsure, and of course head over to their website and download away. It's the free version's worth a try for sure. So on that note, thanks everyone, and have a great day.